Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories. We have stories that should thrill you a little and chill you a little.
It's amazing.
What you'll hear are adventures sent in by you guys, classic stories from the pulp mags, and episodes from the golden age of radio. We have special segments like Ghost Stories with Sylvia.
That's amazing.
And These Are Your Stories. So settle in for the next hour and enjoy the show. One more thing. You just might want to prepare yourself to be taken away from today.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by...
Ron, are you going to play a mystery today? Or are we still reading short stories?
Mystery.
Okay, then who is the sponsor?
Today, OP, the sponsor is...
Yes.
The phrase...
Yes.
Of course I talk to myself. Sometimes I need expert advice.
Hello, Emily.
Carl, it's you.
It's reassuring to see that you haven't forgotten me, my dear.
Where have you been all these years, Carl?
Frankly, Emily, I've been trying to lose the memory of our 10 years of marriage. But I must admit I haven't succeeded.
Go away. Leave this house. This time, never come back.
I have no intentions of returning after this visit, my dear wife. You see, I'm going to kill you.
You're mad.
I really can't resist the situation. It has all the elements. A woman alone in a house in the country, a summer storm, a perfect motive, and an ingenious alibi.
Stay away from me, Carl. Don't touch me.
Don't run away, Emily. Come here.
You must have had quite a ride here in this storm.
Yes, Inspector, but I wanted to report my wife's death as quickly as possible.
I understand you've been away several years.
My wife and I separated 10 years ago.
How'd you happen to come back?
Well, that's rather a strange story, Inspector. It seems that my wife is quite frightened of doctors and refuses to consult them. About 5 days ago, I received a letter from her that she felt she was dying. Well, my wife has always been a strange sort of woman. I hesitate to say it so bluntly, but I'm certain you're aware of the reputation she had here in the village.
No disrespect intended, of course, but she was known as being slightly eccentric.
Yes. By the way, when can you come out to the house to write a report on the suicide?
Well, I'm afraid we'll have to wait till the storm subsides a bit, but I realize you want this whole embarrassing affair disposed of as quickly as possible, so if you'll allow me to have the details, I can begin my report.
Good. Well, I arrived at the house about 8 o'clock tonight. I found my wife in her bedroom. She was bleeding from several small wounds. She told me that they were self-inflicted.
Didn't you stop the bleeding?
Yes, but she only laughed and said there was nothing I could do. You see, she revealed to me that she suffered from hemophilia. It would be impossible to stop the flow of blood. There were too many wounds.
The storm seems to be letting up. I think we'll be able to make it to the house now. I must warn you that anything you say will be used against you in your trial. I'm accusing you of the murder of your wife.
What flaw did the inspector find in Carl's story? In just a moment, we'll know, but first...
Big flaw, but not necessarily airtight.
I have no idea.
Of course you don't. He is going to come back and say that hemophilia can't happen in women.
I have heard that.
Fallacy. You see, it's actually somewhere between 0.5% to a little bit more than 1%.
So you say there is a chance?
Yep.
But we heard him kill her.
Well, there is that.
How is this a mystery?
That, BG, we may never know.
And now, back to our story.
Carl, you murdered your wife, and with one of the most gruesome methods I've ever encountered. Your story stamped itself as a lie when you told me your wife said she suffered from hemophilia. For your information, my friend, women never suffer from the affliction of hemophilia. They may transmit it to male members of their family by means of heredity, but they themselves are never affected by it. The blood on your hands won't wash off easily.
Well, that was pretty bad.
You think that was bad? How about this? What do a tick and the Eiffel Tower have in common?
What?
They're both parasites.
You know, BG, bad jokes might be the only thing on Earth that actually gets better the more terrible they are.
What's that you said?
Hello, and welcome to the podcast. The show today is jammed packed with stuff, so I really don't have any time to tell you all about it. So let's just get to it. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Audible has sponsored the show now since July of 2019. We have reviewed more than 140 audiobooks, and the list keeps growing. Did you know that Audible has over 200,000 books available? And a lot of those are included in the free catalog. Audible is amazing, and it is the perfect companion to Ron's Amazing Stories. If you like this podcast, you're going to love Audible. So what am I listening to? The Downloaded by Robert J. Sawyer and narrated by Brendan Fraser. This is a brand new book from Audible. Also, it's one of the first audiobooks to make use of Dolby Atmos. What is that, you might ask? Imagine sound radiating from every direction with a depth and clarity so real that you will think that you've landed headlong into the action. Now, before I tell you about this book, here is a short sample from it. Of course, you'll have to imagine what Dolby Atmos would be like. After all, this podcast is broadcast in mono.
So, you're the person who wants to interview each of us? What? Sorry, I'm having trouble understanding your accent. When did I first realize something was wrong? Let's see.
I thought about my daughter Annabelle. I could serve my sentence and still be out before she turned 10, instead of her having to listen to decades of people telling her what a monster her father was without me around to explain. I'd be there with her as she grew up. Annabelle was just about the cutest little girl you ever saw. Yeah, I'm biased, but it was true. Wanted to hug her, to tousle her dark hair. But I couldn't do any of that. All I could do was look and listen, to laugh when she laughed, and to cry when the video ended, knowing half a year would pass before I got the next one.
So where are they? Where are our bodies?
Who in the hell knows?
Have you tried contacting Mission Control?
Of course. No answer. In fact, I can't pick up any radio signals. So, are you game?
When we made it to the second floor, we saw 4 men and 3 women using a conference table as a battering ram to try to break through the chamber's sealed metal door. It looked like it would give way any minute now.
What the hell are you doing?
They paused.
Who are you?
Demanded a broad-shouldered white guy.
Jürgen Haas. I'm a doctor.
You ever hear of a prison break, Doc? Well, we're gonna break this prison.
I can't force you to listen.
I know you can disappear in a puff of smoke anytime you like, but I'm begging you to hear me out. Because see, I know what it's like to make wrong choices. So what's it gonna be? Do we get to live? Or are you gonna leave us all here to die?
In 2059, two vastly different groups of people undergo cryogenic suspension. While their bodies are frozen, their minds are still active and awake, and are uploaded into a massive quantum computer. The first group is all astronauts about to leave Earth on a one-way interstellar colonization mission. The second group consists of convicted murderers and volunteers who elected to serve their sentences in a virtual reality prison. But while both groups are suspended, a global cataclysm devastates most of Earth, and their cryosleep is extended by over 500 years. When they're automatically awakened, downloaded, they discover that they are all that remains of humanity. And now they face a new crisis. A colossal asteroid is on a collision course with Earth. The question remains, will they find a way off the planet? Well, I'm not going to answer that. However, I will say that this is a fantastic story, and the voice acting is some of the best I've ever heard from Audible. As I said, this recording makes use of Dolby Atmos, and I'm here to tell you that it made the presentation not just good, but amazing. But what do you need to make it work? Well, for me, it was just my iPad and my Apple EarPods. However, it works with many Android and Windows products. There are a whole bunch of options. Just a bit about the author himself. Robert J. Sawyer is considered one of Canada's best-selling science fiction authors. He's won multiple awards and has published 24 novels. The main voice actor in this one is Brendan Fraser. He had his breakthrough in 1992 with the comedy Encino Man, and is best known for his role in the Mummy franchise. Also, I should point out that there is a full cast, which includes Luke Kirby, Vanessa Sears, Colm Feore, Andrew Fung, and many others. I have one more clip for you from this one. It comes from Brandon and Robert themselves about the story.
In the downloaded, I read the character of Roscoe Cadulian. He's a convicted murderer, and he killed his childhood tormentor. He agrees to a pilot sentencing program where inmates serve their time in cryosleep. The idea is that it still feels like a full 20 years in his mind, but it doesn't quite work out that way.
The inspiration did not come from science fiction, ironically. It came from mystery fiction, being grilled by some interrogator whose identity we don't reveal until late in the story, really appealed to me as a way of both exploring an interesting mystery and getting to the heart and soul of who these characters were.
There are some parallels that it's sort of projecting to our life now that I think will feel kind of relatable.
Action.
So much of acting is physical and about creating a sense of imagination and mystery. But when you read aloud, you've got the author's work right there before you, and all of that thinking is taken care of. So it's just about finding the voice, really. It'll all be gone soon, won't it? Not just what's left of Waterloo and any of the other 21st century cities, but the pyramids, the Great Wall of China, every monument.
I was absolutely thrilled when they told me that Brendan Fraser was going to be Roscoe Cadulian in the downloaded. Roscoe also, though, sort of rises to be more than he started as. He ends up being the person who's going to unify all the characters.
Yeah, he has his faults. He's rough around the edges, he's made some mistakes, but he has a soul. And I felt like that dichotomy made it interesting so that you could find what's sympathetic about that man.
In terms of Jürgen's journey, there's a sort of superiority that he has in his own sense of self that I think felt fresh and new to me. I also don't really think I've explored anything that's sort of in the future. The lights were on.
I wondered if they'd been on for the past 5 centuries or had lit up in response to my reanimation procedure. 5 centuries. Or was it?
Everyone who listens to it becomes their own director. They fulfill the story with the wealth of their own imagination. And in the downloaded, it feels like it feeds the imagination more.
Well, if any of that appeals to you, please head to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories, and you can have the downloaded for free. Here's what Audible has set up for us. They are offering a free audiobook in 30 days to give you the opportunity to check out the service. This also grants you access to the included catalog, which is constantly updated with new stuff. In fact, it's how I found today's title. So, to download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. You won't regret it on this one. Thank you, Audible. And now, it's time for more of your stories.
These are your stories, sent by you, for you.
I was thinking the other day about how many stories have been sent in since we started These Are Your Stories. So I went back and I looked over the list. I have kept every story ever sent into the show in a program called Scribner. As of this week, there are a total of 11 folders with 369 stories in them. While shocked at the number, I can only thank you all for sharing your lives with this podcast. Like Keenan Waters from Oklahoma. He sent in a story that, if I'm being honest, makes no sense. But hey, isn't that why it's on Ron's Amazing Stories in the first place? He sent in a picture of the home that he lives in. If I get permission, I will have a link to it in the show notes. He has titled his story, "Why Are You Just Standing There?" We live in a small mobile home with 2 young children, a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old. The mobile home is only 12 feet wide and 30 feet long, so it's very cramped. The living room and kitchen are combined into one space, and there are 2 bedrooms separated by a hallway. For now, we are taking turns sleeping on the couch in the living room with the baby on a cot. The 3-year-old is co-sleeping with us in the bedroom. We are currently renovating the other bedroom to turn it into a nursery for both the kids. One night, I was on duty. My 3-year-old comes out every night when it's my turn. Nothing unusual there except that it was 2:50 a.m. He came running out crying, followed by my wife behind him. It was dark, so I could just see her standing in the doorway in her orange nightshirt. I guess I should point out that I just assumed it was him because I really couldn't see his features. It was dark and only the LEDs on the back of our TV were lighting up the room. The TV was about 5 feet away behind a partition with a small open arch midway up the wall, facing away from the door. I tucked my little boy in beside me and sat up looking at my wife. Then I did a double take, shook my head a bit, and watched our boy running out again. He stopped and looked at me and smiled. He didn't say anything, and I just sat there thinking, why is he just standing there, looking at me? He then proceeded to step back, turn sideways, and slipped behind the door. My wife followed him back to bed wearing a black t-shirt. Realization hit me about 3 minutes later that my wife had been wearing an orange nightshirt. Also, I looked down at the boy now asleep beside me. It was my son. I jumped up, ran to the now closed door, and as I approached it, it just disappeared. I looked at my wife, who was now asleep in bed without our son. When I got back to the couch, both our babies were there. I crawled back under the covers and tried to make sense of what just happened. The next morning, my wife got up for work, and she said that she didn't even know our son got up last night, and she was indeed wearing a black t-shirt. So what was it? A spirit? Time distortion? Or whatever? But it sure creeped the heck out of me. All I can say is, let's see if this ever happens again. Keenan Waters, Oklahoma. Well, what can I say about that? It could be anything from a strange lucid dream to dual time slips, or possibly a double doppelganger? I don't know. And who can say? Except, thank you for sharing your story with us, Keenan. This next story comes from Regan Branch, who lives in Indiana. She didn't say which city, but here is her story. Hey Ron, thank you for the show. I love it. It is my 20th birthday as I'm sending this. I have wanted to tell this story on your show for a while. Doing so is my birthday present to me. It took place when I was about 12 years old. I was in competitive dance, so my mom and I would drive for hours to get to the competitions. Luckily, my cousin, who is the same age as me, was also on my dance team, so we would go on these trips together with my aunt. We were traveling to a competition in Michigan around the Kalamazoo Battle Creek area. We checked in at the Knights Inn Motel. Everything is fine until it's time to go to bed. I was awakened to the sound of the toilet flushing. Not out of the ordinary. However, when I looked up at the two queen beds that were next to each other, all of my family members were in bed, asleep. No one was in the bathroom. I eventually went back to sleep, and when I woke up the next morning to get ready, my aunt and mom were both talking about how creepy the room was. My mom explained that last night she had been awakened to the sound of drawer handles banging against the dresser. The only problem is that the dresser in the room had round knobs, not handles. Me thinking that I was being funny, I decided to Google our room number, motel name, location, and ghost stories. I clicked on the first link that popped up. My jaw dropped as I read, "The Ghost of Regan, my name, and a story about a horrible murder." My name is super uncommon, especially the way it's spelled, so it was beyond creepy that it was coincidentally the name of the supposed ghost that was haunting the room. Super creepy. By the way, we checked out of there ASAP and moved to a Motel 6. Cheaper anyway. Regan Branch, Indiana. Well, Regan, you know I had to try to research this for myself. I didn't find the link that you saw, but I did read a few reviews about the Knights Inn, mostly 1 star with complaints about cleanliness and unsavory types hanging about. I also found the murder of Christine Regan in 2014 that took place in an apartment building near that hotel. So there is that. Thank you for sharing your story. Well, that's it for this time. If you have a story that you would like to share, like Reagan did, head to the main website at ronsamazingstories.com. Click on the story submission banner, leave your story, give it a title, and please tell me where you're from. I'll read it if I can. Our featured story is a sad, but yet fascinating bit of science fiction. It's also a story with a story, and I'll get to that after you've heard it. If you're old enough to remember the first space flights in the 50s and 60s, you'll also remember just how important fuel conservation was. You were allowed so many burn cycles, and if you exceeded that amount, the mission was a failure. But what if the mission only allowed for failure, meaning that there was only enough fuel for one outcome? That is what our story is about. It is titled Cold Equations, and it first aired on the OTR series X-1 in August of 1955.
Countdown for blast off. X-5, 4, 3, 2, X-1, fire. From the far horizons of the unknown come transcribed tales of new dimensions in time and space. These are stories of the future, adventures in which you'll live in a million could-be years on 1,000 maybe worlds. The National Broadcasting Company, in cooperation with Street and Smith, publishers of astounding science fiction, presents
X minus 1.
Tonight's story, Cold Equations.
There is no margin of safety along the rim of a frontier. There can't be any until the way is made for those who come later. Until then, the penalty for mistakes is a grim one. The laws of physical nature operate with irrevocable certainty, with no room for mercy, kindness, or sentimentality. In space, life becomes a cold equation, and the equal sign is often followed by death. I know. I'm the pilot of an EDS.
Come in.
You sent for me, Commander?
Yes. Sit down, Barton. We just got an ED from the Territorial Space Station on Woden.
Woden. That's in the Crab Nebula, isn't it?
That's right. There are 2 exploration parties there on Manning's continent. 8 men each.
Mm-hmm.
They've got calla fever in one of them and no serum.
Oh, and I thought this was going to be a nice, quiet passenger run.
Computers are working out your payload and your course right now. In exactly 10 minutes, we'll drop in a normal space and launch your ship.
I'll get her ready.
One thing.
What's that?
Woden is at the maximum pay limit for an EDS. Figuring the weight of the serum, we'll be able to give you just enough fuel to land on Manning's continent if you make it the first pass. Otherwise, you'll burn out in midair.
Mm-hmm. Standard procedure.
Report to launching control.
Right.
Good luck, Barton.
Thanks. Oh, by the way.
Yes?
When can I expect to be picked up?
We'll make a stop on the run back to Earth sometime next year. You'll be notified by radio.
Okay.
Sorry, we can't make it sooner.
That's what happens when you sign on for EDS work. I'll see you next year, Commander. Down in the belly of the Stardust, the crew was working like beavers to get the EDS, the Emergency Dispatch Ship, ready. Mechanics and technicians were swarming all over the place. Girls in inspectors' uniforms were checking the gauges in the supply cabinet. 9 minutes later, the exact course was in the computer. The serum was stowed in my supply cabinet closet, and little EDS 4G3 was ready to be born into space.
Barton?
Yes, sir.
30 seconds to blast off. All set?
All set.
I'm turning you over to traffic.
Ready.
Traffic control. Come in, EDS 4G3.
Ready.
20 seconds. Lock open. 15 seconds. Space drive on.
Space drive on.
10 seconds. Gravity neutralizer on.
Neutralizer on.
5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blast off.
I don't remember how long it was afterwards that I first noticed something wrong. Maybe an hour, maybe 2. There was nothing to show it except the needle and the heat gauge. It was on 0 when we left the Stardust, and now I noticed that it had crept up toward the 30 mark. That meant something inside the ship was radiating heat. That something was in the supply closet, and it was alive. All right. Come out. Whoever or whatever you are, if you don't come out in 5 seconds, I'm going to blast you. 1, 2. Well, I'll be...
Hello. I'm Marilyn Lee Cross.
What are you doing in there?
I'm a stowaway.
Oh, my...
What's the matter? Do I have to pay a fine or something?
What are you doing here?
I wanted to see my husband.
Who's your husband?
He's with the government survey crew on Woden. I haven't seen him since he left Earth 4 years ago.
Okay. But what made you hide in my EDS?
I have a job waiting for me on Mimir, but I heard you were going to Woden and there was plenty of room, so I hid. Oh, I knew I'd be breaking some kind of rule, but what's one little rule?
What's one little rule? H amount of fuel will power an EDS with a mass of M safely to its destination. H amount of fuel will not power an EDS with a mass of M plus X safely to its destination. Well, how could she be expected to know? She was 5'2" with brown curly hair and the faint, sweet smell of perfume. She was 5'2" and she smelled like apple blossoms. And her name was X in an equation that would have to be balanced.
Stardust. Come in, EDS. Come in.
This is Barton, emergency dispatch pilot 4G3.
Go ahead.
Give me Commander Delhart.
What's the message, EDS?
I have to consult Commander Delhart.
The commander is busy.
Listen, you squirt. Give me Commander Delhart.
One moment, 4G3. Commander Delhart, emergency message from EGS 4G3.
This is Delhart. What is it?
At 0800 hours, I discovered a stowaway aboard my ship.
A stowaway?
Yes, sir.
Well, have you notified ship's records?
Not yet, sir.
You know the regulations as well as I do.
Of course I know the regulations. That's why I'm calling.
Martin, what's going on?
Sir, this is a girl. A young woman.
Oh.
She wanted to see her husband on Woden. She didn't know what she was doing.
I see.
I wondered, sir, maybe the cruiser could change course or something?
I'm afraid not. We're hundreds of light years apart now. We have a limited fuel supply ourselves, with 900 passengers.
Is there any chance?
No.
Okay, Skipper.
Better get the information to ship's records.
Okay.
Martin.
Skipper?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
You cut our acceleration, didn't you?
Yes.
Why?
Well, save fuel. For a while. How did you manage to stow away?
Well, I was taking a language lesson in Mimirese from a girl in the inspection corps. The order came in for your trip, and I just went along on an impulse. It was easy. I'll be a model prisoner, I promise.
Oh, if you were only a thief or a spy, it would make it easier.
Make what easier?
Forget it. Why couldn't she have been somebody with some ulterior motive, a fugitive, hoping to lose himself in a raw new world, a crackpot with a mission? Why did she have to be a woman? A beautiful, kind, trusting woman?
Stardust.
Barton, EDS 4G3.
Go ahead, 4G3. Identify a stowaway.
Give me your identification disc, Miss Cross.
Here. Why?
Well, it's for ship's records. Identification number T8374.
One moment. This is for the gray card, of course.
Yes.
I'll need the time of...
I'll tell you later.
That's highly irregular.
Then we'll do it in a highly irregular manner. The subject is a young woman. She's listening to everything that's said. Are you capable of understanding that?
Oh. Go ahead, 4G3.
Number T8374-Y54. Name, Marilyn Lee Cross. Female, married. Born July 7th, 2160. Good Lord, you're only a child. Height, 5 feet 2 inches. Weight, 110. Hair, brown. Eyes, blue. Complexion, light. Blood type O. Original destination, Port City, Mimir. Listen, I'll call you back later. Look, miss.
Marilyn.
Look, Marilyn. I guess you don't know what you got yourself into here. Well, it's like this. This ship is carrying Calla fever serum to the survey group on Woden.
Yes.
Their supply was wrecked in a tornado. The fever is always fatal unless the serum is given in the first 48 hours. Now, these little ships have exactly enough fuel to reach their destination. If you stay aboard her, your added weight will cause it to use up all its fuel before it can land.
What happens then?
We crash. You die, I die, and 6 fever victims on Woden die.
Can't they send out another ship to meet us?
There are no ships to send.
Well, Oh, no. Oh, no, you couldn't do that.
That's how it has to be.
But that's crazy. I haven't done anything. I haven't hurt anybody.
I'm sorry. I should have told you before, but I wanted to make sure there was no other way.
You mean it? You're going to make me leave this ship?
That's how it is.
But I'll die. I'll explode. I'll be like those horrible pictures of...
Try to understand.
I do understand. You're going to kill me, and I didn't do anything.
I know you didn't. I know you didn't. That has nothing to do with it.
It has everything to do with it. Nobody just dies like that for no reason. Oh, listen. Maybe there are other cruisers. Cruisers you don't know about. Maybe the radio. Maybe it...
Now, listen to me. It's different here. Different from anything you've ever known. On Woden, there are 16 men. 16 men on an entire world. They're fighting. Fighting an alien environment. The environment fights back. You can only make a mistake once.
And I made a mistake.
Yes.
There's no hope.
Absolutely none. You'll have to be put out of the ship. It was better so. With the going of all hope would go the fear. Then would come the resignation. She needed time, and there was so little.
EDS. Starship to EDS. Need pertinent data.
All right, Starship.
When do you expect to complete your report?
I need a computer check.
I'll give you statistics. Statistics.
This is EDS 4G3. I'm intersecting course vector 7.3 at 0831. Deceleration 1750, weight 1 ton. I would like to stay at point 10 as long as the computers allow. Will you give them the question?
Check. I'll call you back.
We wouldn't have long to wait. The new factors would be fed into the steel maw of the computer bank, and the electrical impulses would go through the complex circuits. Here and there, a relay would click, a tiny cog turn over. But it would be the current, formless, mindless, invisible, which would determine with utter precision how long the pale young girl beside me would live. 5 little segments of metal in the second bank would trip against an inked ribbon, and the machine would spit out the answer.
You will resume deceleration at 1910.
It was 1810 when he spoke. 1 hour. She has 1 hour to live. That's it.
All I did was hide in a closet. And now you tell me I have to die. I don't believe it.
You might as well get used to it.
If this happened back on Earth, 1,000 ships would fill the sky. The whole world would know about it. They'd do everything to save me.
This isn't Earth.
It was such a big dream. Jerry and I separated almost 5 years ago. We were too young. And I was going to see him to try to make everything all right again. Are you married?
I was.
Oh?
She ran off with some guy in the weather service.
Do you still think about it?
I don't let myself.
Where is she?
Back on Earth. Look, if you don't mind, I'd just as soon talk about something else.
Okay. What do you do when you've got an hour to live? What do you talk about?
What's Jerry like?
Jerry? Oh, he's a funny guy. When he found out, I mean about the other fella, he didn't get mad. He cried. That was all he felt, sadness.
So you walked all over him.
Well, I thought I wanted him to get mad at me, to be jealous.
And now?
I've been thinking about him for 5 years. So when I heard the ship was bound for Woden and I knew Jerry was there, I stowed away. I didn't know about the fuel. I didn't know this would happen to me.
She had violated a man-made law that said keep out. The penalty was not of man's making or desire. It was not a penalty men could revoke. H amount of fuel will power an EDS with a mass of M safely to its destination. The time was 1830. 40 minutes. It was beginning to get me. A space frontier is a rough place, and I'd seen 100 men die since I left Earth. But this was different. I watched her as she wrote a message to her folks. I watched her as she fought her way through the black horror of fear toward the calm gray of acceptance. And then there it was on the view screen. The planet Woden. A red ball enshrouded in the blue haze of its atmosphere, swimming in space against the background of star-sprinkled blackness. The chronometer on the instrument panel said 1845. Listen, we're in radio range of Woden now. I mean, would you want me to try to contact your husband?
Jerry?
It'd mean he would know you're going to die. There'd be nothing anyone can do.
Yes. I would like to talk to him. Do you think we can?
Well, the planet is turning. If his group is on the side facing us, we might be able to reach him.
Oh, try.
All right. Hello. Hello, Woden. EDS to Government Survey Group. Can you hear me? Come in, Woden. They may not be monitoring.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Identify yourself, please.
This is Government Survey Group 1 on Planet Woden.
This is John Barton, EDS pilot.
You have the serum?
Yes. How bad is it?
1 man died last night. 6 have the fever. How long will it take to...
I start deceleration at 1910 hours. I should be able to land at 1930.
Thank God.
Look, do you have a Gerald Cross in charge of the group?
Commander Cross? Yes, we do.
Could I speak to him?
He isn't here. He's out with the survey team.
When do you expect him?
Can't say.
How do you read me? How much time do we have left for communication?
Less than 15 minutes.
All right. If Commander Cross comes back before we lose radio contact, will you have him buzz me? It's important.
Okay, EDS.
I'll keep the set open.
Check.
The minutes passed like small bits of eternity. On the view screen, I could see Manning's continent sprawled like a gigantic hourglass in the eastern sea. There was a thin line of shadow where it was beginning to disappear as the planet turned on its axis. I looked at the pale woman next to me, and I thought of another woman long ago who'd sat next to me and cried because I wouldn't try to understand. What had she written in those letters back home? What would they think of the faceless, unknown pilot who'd sent her to her death? What would I think of myself alone nights, reliving this voyage?
Cold, isn't it?
I'll turn up the thermostat.
Nothing from Jerry?
We have about 2 minutes of radio contact left.
Maybe it's better. I mean, suppose it were you and your wife tried to call you. How would you feel?
I don't know.
Do you ever hear from her?
I got a letter about a year ago. I tore it up.
That was foolish.
Yeah, it was.
Life is so terribly short to be wandering around alone.
Well, Wait a second, we're getting something.
How much time before I have to leave the ship?
About 10 minutes.
Hello, EDS. Hello, EDS. Come in. Come in.
EDS.
This is Woden. I have Commander Cross.
All right, go ahead.
Hello, this is Commander Cross.
Jerry Cross?
Yes.
I have someone for you. Go ahead.
Hello.
Jerry?
Hello?
Jerry?
Who is it?
It's me, Marilyn.
Marilyn.
I wanted to see you again. I stowed away on the EDS.
You what? But Marilyn...
It doesn't matter, Jerry. All that matters is that I can tell you all the things I've kept inside for so long. Jerry, I want you to know I've never forgotten.
Oh, it's been so many years. I can't believe it.
I thought I'd see you again, but now I can't. Jerry, you don't hate me, do you?
Hate you? Oh, Marilyn, I've never stopped loving you. Not for an instant.
Oh, Jerry.
Listen, we don't have much time. The transmission is getting fuzzy. Oh, Marilyn, I've got to see you. There's got to be some way.
There isn't.
Let me talk to the pilot.
Give it to me. Hello?
Pilot, have you called the mothership? Did you have them checked with the computers?
I've done everything. You've been on the frontier long enough to know the setup in an EDS.
Oh, dear God, there must be something, some way.
Do you think I'd let this happen if I wasn't sure?
He tried to help me, Jerry. He tried. And it really doesn't matter. I'm not frightened anymore. Not now.
But how did you get here? I don't understand.
Well, I was going to Mimir to take a job, I thought. And now I realize I was just going because I'd be closer to where you were. Oh, Jerry, all this time.
Don't. Let me tell you something. Marilyn, I've always known you'd come back to me. I've known it every minute. It's what's kept me alive. I want you to hold that in your mind.
Jerry, I can't hear you.
We haven't much time. We're losing radio contact.
Jerry!
Oh, don't cry, darling. Just know how I feel.
I do.
It's fading.
There are so many things to say. Jerry, if you can still hear me, maybe I'll come to see you again. Maybe I'll come to you in your dreams, or be the touch of a breeze, or one of those golden-winged little birds singing my silly head off. Maybe I'll be nothing you can see or hear, but you'll know I'm there. Think of me like that, Jerry. Goodbye.
Goodbye, my darling.
She sat motionless in the hush that followed. And then she looked at me.
Now?
Now. I pulled down the black lever, and the inner door of the lock slid open. She walked with her head up and the brown curls brushing her shoulders. I let her do it alone. She stepped into the lock and turned to face me, and I could see the pulse in her throat.
I'm ready.
I pulled the red lever, and there was a slight waver as the air gushed out. I thought I sensed a bump, as if something had bumped the outer door. And then there was nothing. The white hand of the closet temperature control was back at 0. A cold equation had been balanced, and I was alone in the ship.
You have just heard X-1, presented by the National Broadcasting Company in cooperation with Street and Smith, publishers of astounding science fiction. Tonight, by transcription, X-1 has brought you Cold Equations, written by Tom Godwin and adapted for radio by George Lefferts. Featured in the cast were Court Benson as Barton, Jay Meredith as Marilyn, Milo Bolton as Commander Delhart, Bob Hastings as Jerry Cross, Jack Arthur as Traffic Control Officer, and Walter Kinsella as the Woden Monitor. Your announcer, Bill Rippey. X-1 was directed by Ken McGregor and is an NBC Radio Network production.
Not a great ending, but that is the nature of a cold equation. You don't like to think about the consequences, but the fact of the matter is that X must equal Y, and if it doesn't, you have to provide the needed variables to make it balanced. In this case, the life of an unknowing girl. Well, I told you that this story has a story. The Cold Equations was first published in Astounding magazine in August of 1954. In 1970, the Science Fiction Writers of America selected it as one of the best short stories published before 1965, and it was therefore included in the Science Fiction Hall of Fame. It was written by Tom Godwin. He was active throughout the 1950s and into the 1970s. In his career, Godwin published 3 novels and about 30 short stories. He is best known for Cold Equations and the controversial dark ending that helped redefine the genre. This story has been widely anthologized and dramatized. An adaptation of the story aired on the 1962 British anthology series Out of This World and starred Peter Weingard and Jane Asher. Another television adaptation aired as part of the 1985 revival of The Twilight Zone. It starred Terrence Knox as Captain Barton and Christine Hurt as Marilyn Cross. I had a chance to watch this one recently, and it is a great episode, even though Miss Cross still perished. However, the first adaptation was the one that you just heard, and in my humble opinion, might be the best of the bunch.
Johnny, is this true?
As you know by now, I like to surf the internet to find the strange and unusual. I do this in the name of the podcast, but the truth is, I would do it anyway, even if there was no podcast. What you're about to hear is...
Johnny, is this true?
I will tell you a story and then ask the question, did I make it up or is it true? Your job is to decide. Let's get started.
Johnny, is this true?
This time on Johnny, Is It True, we're breaking from tradition, and I'm going to tell you 4 stories. 3 of these are completely fake and were created by me. However, one is real and was sent in by Santiago Yates from La Mesa, New Mexico. After you've heard all 4 of them, you will have to decide which one is from Santiago. Let's get started. Story 1. Santiago has just moved out into his first apartment. His grandmother donated a set of dishes and cutlery. He had only 4 spoons. He found that he used them a lot and decided that each night he would wash them so that they would be ready for him in the morning. The first morning when he got up, he found that all 4 spoons were bent. He lived alone and couldn't figure out why. This happened daily until one morning he had forgotten to wash them. The spoons were still in the sink, unbent. Since then, he has decided to leave the spoons in the sink and hasn't had a problem since. Now, what you have to ask yourself is this Santiago's story? Story 2. Santiago had a wonderful dog named Bosco. Every night he could be heard pacing through the house like he was on guard duty. He and his wife bought a cheap camera on Amazon so that they could watch the watchdog. It was amazing to see Bosco perform his ritual. 2 months ago, Bosco passed away from cancer. The couple's hearts were broken. That first night, they heard the familiar sounds of pacing. Santiago grabbed his phone to check the camera. Sure enough, there was Bosco pacing the house. Santiago ran out into the living room, but there was nothing there. Now, what you have to ask yourself is this Santiago's story? Story 3. Santiago says that he didn't believe in ghosts at all until 3 years ago. His father passed away. I was in grief for the longest time and missed him greatly, as did my family. One day my mom had seen something on Netflix and decided to take a photo of it. The phone flashed and took the picture, only to find a mysterious glowing orb floating in the middle of the photo. She thought it was just a reflection off something. Mind you, this was at midnight and in the pitch black. So she moved to a different angle. She aimed, prepared, and clicked again. That same orb was in the middle of that photo in the exact same spot as before. She also said that she felt comforted, as if her husband was right there. Is this definitive proof of ghosts, or just a fluke? That's for you to decide, and if this is Santiago's real story. Story 4. Our last story is my favorite. Santiago says that it was in 2007, a Sunday, and 11 o'clock in the morning. In his words, 3 of us, students, living in a small room, rented an apartment. We were watching a TV show about paranormal activities. We should have known better. The documentary ends. Then a packet of tobacco jumped out of the vase that was on the TV stand. It flew across the room and fell on the coffee table, approximately in the middle of it. A real cornhole shot. After a few seconds, that same package slid off onto the floor, all by itself. We surely didn't touch it. It never happened again, and I have no explanation. Okay, so again, what you have to ask yourself is this Santiago's story? Okay, there you have all 4 stories. Now you have to decide which one is Santiago's. Let's begin with the bent spoon. Well, I'm not proud of it, but I made that one up. Not really even a very good story. However, I have heard of spoons bending on their own. What about the flying tobacco? Well, it might be a true story. I found that one on Reddit, but it wasn't Santiago's post. It was from @InterestingRuin6757. I had to translate it from Spanish. So, what about the orb story and the comforting ghost? Well, I've heard stories like this one before, but this wasn't one of them. I totally made that up, and I was happy to do it. Did it fool you? Okay, then, that leaves Santiago's dog, Bosco. If you said that was the story that was true, then you got it right. I wrote an email to Santiago and found out that the activity continues today, although they have never seen the dog since that first night. How about that? Well, that's all for this edition of Johnny Is It True? I hope you enjoyed the game and that you got it right. If you have an idea for this segment, let me know and I will make it happen. My thanks to Santiago for sharing Bosco with us. That was episode number 617, and I need to say thank you to Keenan Waters and Reagan Branch for their stories today. Remember that if you have a story that you want to share, we want to hear it. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you will find any of the links I mentioned and how to contact us. Do you want to help the show? The best thing you can do is to tell your friends all about it, and please leave reviews or feedback wherever you listen. Clicking that follow or like button helps us grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.